thank you all for coming today. I know many of you guys, unfortunately, have just joined us or came a little late in the morning. But for those of you who've joined us from the very beginning, I can honestly say in the 6 years we've run the Dasra Philanthropy Week, this has been the best by far. The speakers that we've had today, starting from Madhukar to individuals in the field who are creating social change day in and day out, are really the reasons why Dasra exists. For the past 16 years, we've had the privilege and the honor to help organizations that are focusing on poverty from ground up, enabling communities to take charge and providing them the platforms to really create social impact. Through these efforts, all of the NGOs we've worked with till date understand a key focus, which at times we forget, and I was fortunate enough to attend a session with Peggy Dulaney Rockefeller and Mr. Premji a few weeks ago in Chennai that Ramesh and Manakshi and YPO members had put together there. And Peggy Dulaney Rockefeller, I think, said it the best, which was no one in this country and no one in this world want to move people out of poverty faster than those individuals who are in poverty. I'm going to say this again because I don't think as funders many times, and unfortunately as NGOs, we realize this. No one works harder in this country or globally to move themselves or uplift themselves out of poverty than the poor themselves. That's a critical belief that we all need to start when we're on this philanthropic journey. We need to realize it's those mothers and fathers who work 4 different jobs, who wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning without a toilet in their house, with the rush to get not only their children to school, but many times work 6 to 7 days a week without a day off. These are the same individuals who unfortunately lose 1,600 children every single day under the age of 5 due to lack of toilets and nutrition. These are the same individuals who unfortunately have to bear the brunt of the 50,000 women who die each year during childbirth. And while we at Dasra have been honored to work with organizations like Magic Bus, Mukthangan, Sneha, and the list goes on and on and on in this journey, we've realized the problems were still not being fixed. And the reason these problems were not being fixed is because those who can fix it, those who have the capability, the scale, and the mandate to do this, is the government. At the end of the day, all our NGOs combined have a goal to create innovative solutions that the government can and should adopt and take to scale. Governments, as we all know, work on 5-year election cycles, which means they don't have the ability to make long-term strategic decisions like many of you enable NGOs to do. Within a 2-year cycle, if you look at the US, for example, re-election campaigns already start. So when it comes time to make tough decisions that's best for the country and best for the communities you're trying to serve, you're already looking at re-election, therefore you cannot, and unfortunately do not necessarily make the right steps to provide choices to these 800 million people that still earn under $2 a day in our country. And that's why I think the last 12 months for Dasra and the team have been the most humbling to work with these organizations who are not looking at the starving children, who do not get the joy that many of our direct service organizations that we love and adore get by seeing changes happening right in front of them. But instead, these organizations many times are risking their security, they're risking their jobs, and they're looking at 10, 15, 20-year goals. And in the face of such adversity, these same individuals are not allowed to, going forward, many of them, to even bring foreign capital into the country to support them. I still remember 3 years ago when we had the Ken Roth from Human Rights Watch speak at this very room. And after he spoke, I came on stage and I explained to the Indian audience that Ken Roth and Human Rights Watch, which is a critical piece of any democracy and country, is not allowed to bring in foreign funders into India. This was a shock to most Indian philanthropists. Many of them did not even understand or realize that we're one of the hardest countries in the world that exists to bring in foreign capital for the development sector. That's why groups like CAP, Noshar Dadrawala, etc., are required to help organizations navigate through this journey. But the 120 entities that we've showcased in our report and we've met and we've worked with, many of them don't have FCRA, will never get it. And unfortunately, those who do have FCRA, like the story that Madhukar told us today, those FCRAs may be taken away. And that's why we're here today. We're here today to realize that while we all may have our pet projects in education or malnutrition or even healthcare, reality is there is one underlying theme that holds this all together, and that's governance. As one of the MLAs spoke this morning, unfortunately today the job of NGOs have been to fill in the gaps that the government is not able to do on their own. Wouldn't it be great if NGOs' job was the opposite, which was just to ensure that the government themselves were filling in these gaps, allowing NGOs to play more of a monitoring and capacity building role to these groups and government agencies and programs versus trying to be the government themselves. And that's why Indian capital is so required today, and that's the urgency that we're trying to get across. In the past year, we have worked with phenomenal entities and leaders. Whether they're lawyers from Cambridge and Oxford who've given up their for-profit law jobs to help parliamentarians write laws. Just think about that. Those of you who vote in our country, how many times have you voted for a lawyer? The reason I bring this up is because the same individuals we put in office are the same ones who have to write laws. So this group called Vidhi, based in Delhi, realized that instead of them assuming that the voters will A, support lawyers, and B, lawyers will actually stand for election, they said, let's just work with the government and help them draft laws that can be monitored and implemented effectively. In the past 12 months, Vidhi has been doing a phenomenal work in actually looking at all of the laws that have been passed in our country, many times since 1850, to demonstrate which laws are required and which laws need to be revoked. There was an article in a leading newspaper a couple of months ago, actually a couple of weeks ago, talking about we still have laws in this country which mandate the number of spittoons that a factory must have. We still have laws in our country that mandate if you have 100 employees or more, you either have to lay off these employees or you have to shut down the company. Most of the laws that exist for the societies and trusts and NGOs in our country were created in the 1850s. Many of the laws that we have against foreigners in our country were actually created to ensure that freedom fighters did not come to India to help throw the British out. These laws need to be revoked. These laws are not being revoked by the parliamentarians because unfortunately they may not have the skills to do so or the knowledge to comb through all of these laws. This is where private philanthropy can play a role. When we heard the individual from Khabar Leheria in the media dark zones that they're in, I don't think it should be a surprise for any of us to think that media is free and independent in our country. In fact, in the last 12 months, I think it's become the exact opposite. And so there's a need to ensure that the independent media survives and highlights issues that both corporates, government, and even large NGOs perhaps in power are committing against the masses. But these entities need support. When you heard the MLA speak on stage about the fantastic work that Praja has done, Praja for many years was funded by their founders, who have full-time for-profit jobs, but put most of their capital in, realizing that Mumbai needed somebody who was helping these MLAs perform better. And so while we have all accepted for so many years that NGOs can take the role to feed starving children, to teach students in schools, to provide healthcare, why don't we realize that there's a need for NGOs to also work to make government from good to great? That's what today and the next 5 years is about. Most of the Dasra giving circles that we've had since the last 6 years when we incepted this sort of giving circle model were 3 crores. So we felt that there was a need to bring 10 philanthropists together and they would gather around and they'd provide 3 crores of funding to many of the organizations in this room. Every week when our team came back, meeting these phenomenal governance organizations, our target kept increasing. We realize these social entrepreneurs need our help more than ever. These social entrepreneurs need a commitment from Indian funders to fund their initiatives. These NGOs need people who look at 10-year horizons, like you would in the business sector, versus 3-month targets. These NGOs need us, and they need us now. And that's why our target went from 3 crores over time to 10, from 10 over time to 50, and I'm very confident, and the Dasra team knows this, within 9 to 12 months, it'll probably go up to 100 crores. And I think it's important to realize, though, that money is not for Dasra. That money is also not even for Praja, Vidhi, CHRI, the phenomenal organizations that exist. That money is for the 3 individuals on this stage to have thousands of change makers like that. So when we talk about teaching somebody to fish, to create a level playing field, to lift people out of poverty, the number one answer to all of those questions is the government. But we need to support the government to do so. We all are guilty of either not voting, of not researching our candidates, or complaining about the government. It's time for that complaining to stop, and it's time for us to take responsibility. And that first stage is supporting some of these initiatives that you see in these research reports. The first stage is to take citizens' justice to the next level and realize if there are wrongs around your community to help stop those. The first stage is to leave this room today and not only think about how much you're going to give, because you are giving, but more importantly, how will your friends give to this? How can we build the strongest democracy in the country from ground up with the 120 organizations that exist today that are doing the work for us while we sit in the Taj? That's the question. And so for us, our 5-year goal is not to have 120 organizations that we look at, but thousands of organizations. For us, the next milestone is the next election. And I remember having this conversation with Jayant Sinha a year and a half ago when he was heading up Omidyar Network. And we realized we needed to, quote unquote, capitalize on that election to start setting the groundwork of enabling organizations that are nonpartisan, that use research and evidence-led data that can help citizens in our country make the right choices. We need to start now, if we're looking at the elections 5 years from now, to train MLAs, panchayat leaders, and individuals on really what are the issues in the community and what are some of those solutions. We need to work now with media to highlight the scorecards that groups like Praja are creating so all of us not only vote, and I think that was another telling point from the MLA, 46% vote usually means people in this room are part of the lot that hasn't voted. It's time to realize if you want to live in a democracy, you have to take responsibility of being a democracy. And unfortunately, the middle class and the rich have absconded that entire view because they feel they don't use government services. They don't send their children to government schools. They don't go to government hospitals. They don't even use the post office anymore. Yet they're not India. You are not India. It's the 800 million people that earn less than $2 a day that need us to be their voice, that need us to be their advocates, that need us to be their change makers. And in all honesty, it starts with writing checks. And so 6 years ago, when we started the Dasra Philanthropy Week, we decided at that point never to ask for money. But I think today we've realized the problem is too large, and the consequences of not investing in a strong democracy are too great for us to sit idle. And that's what many of us have done till date. So I plead that you read our report. You pick which theory of change you want and you agree with, and you fund those organizations directly. If you're interested to be in a governance collaborative and meet with individuals like the Nilakanis, the Premjis, etc., then come into this space. Raise funds to join at a crore level, demonstrating that you as an Indian who pays taxes realizes you also are burdening, you also are carrying the burden of those who don't pay taxes in our country. And so it's you and the 800 million that are suffering, and it's about time we worked in unison with them and honestly the government to make this change happen. Thank you so much for coming today. thank you so much for raising and applying your minds and your resources and contributing to the 50 Crore Fund. And thank you so much for bringing respect to a sector who for so long has not been respected. Thank you.